Hello and welcome to the beginner tatting video series. Today we're going to learn how to do a ring and a chain using a needle. I have some pieces that I have made that are done by shuttle, and this way you can see you're going to get the same result with shuttle that you do needle. Okay, here I have the pattern written out. So before we begin our pattern, I want to show you the different ways that this pattern can be written. This first one, let me zoom in just a little bit so that you can see. Alright, it says R, that means ring. 3, P means Picot, followed by a comma. 3P, which is Picot, that's 3 double stitches, a Picot, comma, 3 double stitches, a Picot, comma, 3 double stitches, close ring, and reverse work. Okay, our chain begins with CH, 5 double stitches, Picot, 5. Now, it can also be written ring 3-3-3-3. CL means close the ring, and reverse work is RW. Chain 5-5, that's 5 double stitches, Picot, 5 double stitches. It can also be written ring 3 Picot separated by 3. What that means, you will have 3 picots with 3 double stitches on each side. CL, close the ring, and reverse work is RW. Chain is 1 picot separated by 5, and that means you have 5 double stitches, a picot, and 5 double stitches. Or you may see a pattern that looks like this, a drawing. That is a diagram. The diagram patterns will have little numbers in between hash marks. These hash marks are your picots. The number is how many double stitches. This is your ring, and this is your chain. As you can see, it has a 5 here with the hash mark and a 5. That means 5 picot 5. Diagram patterns will have an arrow, it will have a dot, an X, it will have some way of telling you where to start the pattern. It may be that where you start is a different colored pin, okay? Like this ring, if you was going to start with the ring, it would be red. If you was going to start with the chain, it would be red. So it will show you where to start on the diagram patterns. You just have to look. Most patterns start with a ring, okay? But some can start with a chain. In later videos, we'll get into that. But this same pattern was done using a shuttle. And today, we're going to use a needle. So you can see that the same pattern can be done using both tools. So let me zoom out and get everything together so you can see what we're doing. Alright? We're going to need a picot gauge, our needle, and a needle threader. We're going to need our thread. We're going to use size 3 crochet cotton again. This is for just purposes of showing you so you can see what we're doing. Now we get one of these floss threaders out. My nose is itching. I've got allergies today. And we want to thread our needle. So we want to stick the floss threader in that little hole, the eye of the needle. We can hit the hole. There we go. And we want to leave the loop up. Drop our thread down into that loop. Okay? Then pull our thread through. Easy peasy. Okay, then we can either put our floss threader to the side. I always put mine back in the case so I don't lose them. Until I break it, I don't like to throw it away. So, little habit of mine. Now, with our needle, we want to pull off 12 to 18 inches of thread as our tail from the needle. Then pull off more thread off our ball, lay it to the side. We want our loop, okay, about 12 inches of thread for our loop. We're going to grab that thread, and as you can see, we have a little loop here. We will be using that loop, okay? Hold our thread on our needle with our index finger and our thumb, okay, till we get everything set up. Once you get it set up, you're going to hold it like this, okay? This little finger here is what's going to hold your stitches on the needle and keep them in place, and everything else works below. Alright, remember what I showed you. Thread in your fingers, close them fingers, point that finger out, take your thread across the finger and up. Okay, now the pattern says we have to do 3 double stitches, so we want the first half of the double stitch, bend your finger, remember we're doing this way for the first half, this way for the second. Way I remember is wrap it around my finger and close it. Okay, and then put that stitch on. That's 1, 2, 3. Now, we want a picot according to the instructions. So we take our picot gauge, alright, slide it. Let me show you what I'm doing here. Slide it up to those stitches, hold it in place with our thumb. Do the first half of the stitch, pull it up to that picot gauge, okay? Well, I totally missed the picot gauge. Let's start that over. Okay, let me use a different picot gauge because that one's a little clunky for me. My fingers are not wanting to work today because Arthur, and I'm determined to show Arthur I'm going to do this. Okay, so we slide our picot gauge up to our stitches. We'll flip that thread across the picot gauge. Now, grab it, pull our thread up to that picot gauge. Do the other half of that stitch. Alright? Now, there are people that can measure their picots without a problem. I'm not one. I use a picot gauge with every pattern. Okay, then once you get your picot in, you see that little gap, that little thread? That's your picot. Okay, you want to slide it up. Now you have your picot in place. Now I'm going to zoom in, since you've gotten the wide shot of what we're doing, I'm going to zoom in a little closer so you can see how this plays. Alright, we've got one of our 3 double stitches on the next part of this pattern. So we want 2 more. 1, 2. Now we need another picot. So we get our little picot gauge, lay it up next to our stitches, hold it, pull our thread up over that picot gauge. Okay? Lay our thumb on it to hold it in place. Do a stitch. Our first stitch. Want to snug it up against that picot gauge. Bring it on up. Do the second half of that stitch. And then remove our picot gauge. Okay? Slide it up. We want 2 more. Okay? 1, 2. Now, we have 3 picot, 3 picot, 3. Here's where we're at on our pattern. 3 picot, 3 picot, 3. We have another picot and another 3 double stitches to do. So, let's get our picot gauge, lay it up there, put our thread across that picot gauge and hold it in place. Snug that picot gauge up to your stitches and do your first double stitch. 1, that's the first half, and 2, that's the second half. Now we have our 3rd picot. Okay, so all we need is 2 more stitches to finish this ring. So let's get them on. 1, 2. Okay, now let me turn that so you can see it. We have our 3 double stitches, our picot, 3 double stitches, picot, 3 double stitches, picot, 3 double stitches. And it says 3 double stitches, picot, 3 double stitches, picot, 3 double stitches, picot, 3 double stitches. The CL says close the ring. To close our ring, you remember that loop I told you about? Well, we're going to make it a little bigger and pull up some of that tail. Okay, I do that to keep the bulk down when I'm closing the ring. Okay, because your stitches stretch as the thread's passing through. So to help control that, so I can get a good tight fit, I pull out some of my bulk. So, food for thought. Now, you want this thread in that hand. You don't want to lose this loop. Okay, and you slide your stitches down. Okay, grab them and pull it through the back end of that needle. You may have to wiggle. I tap very tightly. Some people don't. I do. But you want to wiggle and get it to pull through. Once you've cleared your tail, pull that out of the way. You want to run your needle through that loop. Pull it through. Okay? Now the loop's on your thread. See it? And now we're going to close that ring. Okay? There we go. Now some people don't reverse their work when they're making their chain. Some people do. So we're going to reverse the work, because you should, because this is a way to lock in your stitches. What you want to do is take this ball thread, wrap it around your pinky, get it tight. Take your needle, run it up through the center, okay, and tie a knot. Alright? Just tie a knot. It's called the shoelace trick, or SLT. Alright, then you take your thread, or your pattern, your little ring, and you flip it over. You've reversed your work. Okay, to do your chain, okay, you want to lay your needle right there. There's a little join right here where the two sides of the ring meet. Lay your needle right there, and you've reversed your work, and you're ready for your new direction. Okay? When you reverse your work, the thread that's coming out this way, whether it be to the ball or to a shuttle, this is your working thread. That's the thread you're going to work with. If you work with this, you're working with your tail. You don't want to lose your tail. So, remember, right here. Okay, now, it says chain is 5 picot 5. So we're going to do 5 double stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, now we need a picot, because it calls for a picot, pattern does. So we lay our picot gauge there, pull our working thread over the picot gauge, lay our thumb on it to hold it in place, and do our first of 5 double stitches to lock that picot in. Pull our gauge out, get it out of the way. Okay? Now we want 4 more double stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, now we have our 5 double stitches. Get all of it around here so you can see we have our 5 double stitches, our picot, and 5 double stitches. A picot is the thread between 2 double stitches that sticks out. That's all a picot is. Okay, for our chain now, we pull our thread. We don't worry about catching our loop. because we're doing a chain, not a ring. You pull it through, pull it, pull it, pull it, pull it, till your chain pops into place. Okay, like that. And we're going to lock that stitch in again. Okay, this is a step that shuttle tatters do not have to do. Okay, and that locks those stitches in place. As you can see, we're ready to do the next element. Now if we was going to do a ring, go into another ring, this is how we would do it. Remember, our ball thread is our working thread. Okay, so there you have it, a ring and a chain with picots, and it's in size 3. You can see the huge difference between the threads, so that gives you some semblance of how big your project's going to be with a size 3 thread. Now today you've learned how to read a pattern, how to do a ring and a chain, and lock your stitches in place using a needle. So I hope that helps, and I hope you enjoyed learning this. My advice to you is when you're working with a pattern, read the pattern twice. Make sure you understand it. If you run across something you don't understand, make a note in the comments section. I'll be more than happy to either answer the question or find you the answer. And I hope you enjoyed today's class, and we have many, many more coming. So I wish you a very great day and happy tatting. See you in the next class.